Hello and good morning. Um, I would first like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Flora Charles and the Eurasia Research Foundation to provide me with an opportunity to speak in front of all of you as one of the keynote speakers to this conference. I appreciate the various opportunities Eurasia provides education researchers in the field of academia, thus providing platforms of growth and authorship to personnel like us. Eurasia makes us known to the academic world outside, and I extend my hand and express my interest to continue to contribute and support the vision of Eurasia in its future endeavors, and also continue to expand their outreach in my academic circles in this part of the world. Getting to know me, I am Alykhan Dhanani, and I have a double master's degree, one in teaching and the other in education, from the University College London, IOE. My majors is in education technology, and I am from Tanzania, East Africa. My profession is a teacher educator with the Alykhan networks, with the Alykhan Council in Tanzania, and I also am a voluntary secondary level religious education teacher. So this is the shape of my presentation. I will first introduce my topic. I will give you a glance into the teaching and learning context. I'll give you some examples of some practices, a typical best practice deployed in the context, a few challenges and way forward, and if time allows and if the platform allows, some point for feedback and some questions. Great. So let us start with the context. Spring or March 2020. A revolution in our practice took place. Or not only in our practice, but also in the whole world. And I hope you all have guessed out by now that what am I referring to? And I'm referring to a closure of all face-to-face endeavors because of the pandemic. So many questions arrived now. How will we facilitate the teaching and learning process? How will we connect to our students? How will we assess the learning? What do we do? And how do we address and respond to parents' queries? So what comes into mind is technology or education technology as a first solution. So using technology to reach the audience. So before March 2020, we were using technology to support the teaching and learning environment in the classroom. And after March 2020, we are using technology to conduct and facilitate classrooms. So in an online or in a virtual platform. So if you see the changing role now, that where technology was brought to the classroom to facilitate learning, now the classroom is brought to the technology to continue with the learning. So education technology in some of my readings and in research is commonly known as the use of hardware such as computers, projectors in class to facilitate learning, is the using of gadgets to foster the teaching and learning environment. It is the use of softwares and internet to facilitate learning in the classroom, using technological tools to present and assess learning. So again, if you see, we are again talking about the use of technology in the education teaching and learning environment. However, what does pandemic pedagogy mean now? So I'm now talking about the context, what happens after March 2020. So the teaching and learning with new approaches in the context of the pandemic. Pandemic pedagogy is also the emergency remote teaching. It speaks to the approaches employed in instructional environment to foster learning. It is defaulting to practices which connect the teachers and their learners. It supports teachers to facilitate access to both synchronous and asynchronous modes of teaching. When I try to say synchronous means I mean to say is an online face-to-face means the class is going on. The teacher and the students are present in one platform, and asynchronous means the teachers and the students are not available in the same platform but are connected through offline media. So pandemic pedagogy means is using a fix to facilitate learning in the era of the pandemic. So how to deploy the correct pandemic pedagogy? I use an action research cycle. So it is through action research where the teachers will be able to find out what works well and what does not in the facilitation of the classes. So it starts with a lesson plan or lesson planning. You implement the lesson or facilitate the lesson. You reflect during and after the facilitation, and that guides you in your further lesson planning and facilitation. So, action research to support the pandemic pedagogy. When planning a lesson, the reflection from the previous lesson acts as a guiding point. The reflection guides the teacher on what tools worked, what pedagogy worked, or did not work in the teaching context. During the planning process, the teacher is in constant search and research of new tools and technology to foster the teaching and learning environment. And then using constructive and conscious feedback through reflection and relevant pedagogy can be applied. So again, you see what worked, what did not work, you try to adjust, and that can only happen if we are constantly doing a research in our teaching and learning practice. So let me give you a glance of pedagogy before and after March 2020. So you will be able to see, and some of us as teachers here will resonate to how the world has changed, or the academic educational world has changed after the pandemic or during the pandemic. So the class facilitation was face-to-face. Now it's become online fully through Zoom. The mode was 2.5 hours of face-to-face physical instruction. Now it's become part synchronous, which is 1.5 hours, and it is part asynchronous, means after 1.5 hours, students are given work to be done at home or during in an offline setting. So look at the teaching and learning activities. Okay, so before March 2020, we used to have group work, pen and paper annotation, reading activity through the textbook, physical movement and motor skill presentations in class, and we had in-class voting or sharing of responses in real time. So what happens now is group works are now replaced by breakout rooms. Annotation and paper writing goes to screen annotation. Textbooks have now changed to ebooks and soft copies. Virtual presentations have taken place. Online polls. Chat box have taken over than an in-class talking. So we have now seen that how do we adapt to the pandemic, and that is what we term it as, or I term it as, pandemic pedagogy. So some pandemic pedagogies applied in my context is we started sending emails instead of newsletters. I started having virtual exhibitions because as end of year projects, we need to have exhibitions, and now it all becomes to virtual exhibitions, and then they are live broadcasted. Using of Zoom features such as breakout rooms, annotation, chat box, emotions, etc. The use of Poll Everywhere. It's a platform that can be easily downloadable, where it allows multiple ways of having student work, student voice in the classroom. Quizzes, Flipgrid, Google Jamboard, Google Cloud Services, and also search engines, which I will be talking more about. So sharing a best practice that worked in our context. So the use of available programs from the internet in the classroom instead of creating new ones. We looked at what is available already and then how do we use them in our current setting to foster the learning environment. So one typical example is the use of search engines in the teaching and learning context. Search engines is a tool which is commonly used to look for information on a topic, and I'm sure that you all are very familiar with search engines. But we have consciously looked at how search engines have worked in my context, and I am one of the pioneers of such research here. Search engine is one of the most widely used internet utility. These days, people normally say Google it to know more about something. So we used it in class. Everyone uses it. So we formalized its use in the classroom context. So the use of search engines was brought in both the synchronous and asynchronous mode of teaching. Students use search engines to get information about a topic, to learn about the topic, to present that information, and also to create a whole research on a said topic using search engines, and then correlate information attained to their textbooks. So some of the findings that we looked around, or what came out here, was search engines in line with various educational theories. So one, search engines create and build knowledge. So the search engines or use of search engines contributes to Vygotsky's theory of constructivism and proximal development. Students start learning from the known to the unknown from information elucidated from the search query. Thus also the use of search engines has established the zone of proximal development as well as collaborative learning. So we see two things over here is that how search engines bring the known from the unknown. And how do students collaborate together in the online world through use of search engines and through the data generated through the search engines. Search engines facilitate active learning in the classroom. It involves physical participation, typing the query, choosing the result, reading it, and then presenting the information. So there is a huge step-by-step decoding of what is attained through a search query. And there comes cognition and metacognition. So the application of results in real-life setting by getting real-time information and updated information. Search engines enables critical thinking skills. When creating the search query, you need, or a student needs, to choose words correctively to look for correct information. So creating the search query, when choosing the result for further research, judging the result speaks, and then comparing it to one's perception of one knowledge. So again here what I try to say here is that search engines enables critical thinking is because the students will have to apply various skills to choose what information they need, to further see the authenticity of that information, decode it, understanding it in their own language, and then presenting it. Search engines support differentiation techniques. As you all know, that if you Google search, you get video, you'll get audio, you'll get text, you'll get voice, you'll get pictures, you'll get lots and lots of multiple ways of presenting, and that directly relates to the differentiation theory of education. So it caters to multiple intelligences. Some challenges encountered some challenges encountered in the teaching and learning environment when we were addressing it through the pandemic. Who else is behind the screen? During the classroom, you can see the student, although if the camera is on, you can listen to the children, but who else is around them? Who else is listening to you? Are the parents around? Is a friend around? So we really don't know what exactly or who exactly is around the screen. Attention span. There is a lot of screen time. Attention span is going lower. Students not switching on their camera, so hiding a lot of information, hiding emotions. We cannot look at the students when the cameras are off. And some students really are smart and say that our camera is broken. Some teachers around here would be resonating to what I'm saying here. Some students are multitasking in gaming. Some students are not punctual in class and also when asked to submit their work. And the other thing is the technological divide, especially in this part of the world. So technological divide in brief is the inequality or unequal distribution and access to resources. Some students do not have stable internet connection. Others cannot afford paying for internet or a gadget. Other learners have no internet signals at their residence. Some students have got no electricity, complete 24 hours electricity in this part of the world. So how do we reach out to them? So various other ways had to be deployed. We had to send packages to the students' homes. We had to ask students to come and collect it from the school premises. We had to videotape our lessons and then show it to students or give it to them. So a lot of challenges have occurred and are still occurring, and due to action research, we are able to solve them to an extent. So in summary, pandemic pedagogy is a temporary solution in the teaching and learning environment to facilitate learning endeavors. One such example is the online conference that we are attending today. I remember the conference that was arranged by Eurasia in Singapore last year before the pandemic. We all had traveled there. We had a face-to-face gathering. We presented our work with real-time feedback. But today, that practice has changed. But the conference has taken place, is taking place. Instead of now presenting face-to-face, we are doing it through an online media, sending our recordings and learning as well from this platform. So we are adapting to various methods to enable learning in whatever scale is possible. We are trying to reach learners through available technology or other means. But again, pandemic pedagogy is a temporary fix for the current situation, preparing us for a new normal. However, it has cut a few costs of traveling, cut a few costs here and there, but I hope this doesn't become a practice. We can learn from it, try to adapt it, and whenever possible, return to the normal teaching and learning practices, but trying to use the skills that we have today from the pandemic. I would thank you here, and if there are any questions and feedback, you're most welcome to share.